Well, with my strawberry kiwi drink and my tomatillo poblano salsa and this, why don't we get started and delve into Strongholds and Followers in order to wrap it up for the week. We've gone over a lot in this supplement. Something I'm not going to go over is the Siege of Castle Rend, which is a built-in adventure to help you understand and test the rules of the supplement. I do that because if you're going to pick up this supplement, I want you to do it for the content, and I want you to take those rules and play with them and customize them and enjoy them for what they are and how they can be run as you would present the Siege at Castle Rend. You know, just going over a module itself, you know, there's definitely storyline concepts. There's ways there's ways to consider using the mechanics inside this book, but I don't think it would be proper to do in this format, because I want to leave something for you to enjoy and for you to test yourselves in your knowledge, or at least your ability to reference back and forth. It seems that Santa was a giant from the frozen lands of Icewind Dale and you stole his hat. Well, thank you, Syart. I'll take that as a compliment. Now, what I will do, we are going to begin tonight's workshop with the magic items you can find inside of the Siege of Castle Rend, and we'll end the workshop anyway. We could talk afterwards. We'll be going through the new items that are listed in the back of the book for general consumption. So hopefully you can read this. If you need me to... Here, I can probably make it a little bit larger. Kind of like... There we go. Now, are all these weapons completely unique to this book? Not necessarily. You might want to adapt them, or adopt them even, into your own games, or use them as a basis for something else. Maybe a cool weapon an NPC or a villain has in your game. Grace is a longsword of rarity. Does require attunement. The blade of this longsword seems to glow white, like it is a beam of light hammered into the shape of a sword. Its hilt is gold-plated and has 3 embedded sapphires. This longsword has a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. Additionally, it gains 1 charge whenever an attack made with it deals more than 20 damage in a single blow. It can hold up to 3 charges, but all unused charges disappear when you take a long rest. While the sword holds any charges, it radiates bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light for an extra 20 feet. As an action, you can expend any number of charges to restore hit points to a creature you can touch with the sword's blade. Expending 1 charge restores 10 hit points, 2 for 20, 3 for 40. The armor of Saint Gade, the Confessor. This set of magic plate mail, covered in silver filigree, grants +1 armor class to the wearer. Also, once per month, The owner can summon the spirits of the blue dragon phalanx to aid them in battle. The phalanx serves for 1 hour or 2 battles, whichever happens first. The spirits will fight your enemies, but if ordered to do anything other than fight in a battle against an enemy army, they stand around looking confused, wondering what's happened to their bodies and the world they once knew. I would imagine that this is, being +1 armor, this is going to be at least a rare item, but given that it can summon sort of this great legion, it would probably be a little further up there. Potion of Enhanceability. Starts as a basic gray potion with no effect. However, if a material component is added, it gains one of the following effects. Potion of Bear's Endurance, you gain 2d6 temporary hit points and have advantage on constitution checks for an hour. Requires a hair from a bear. Potion of Bull Strength. You have advantage on strength checks and your carrying capacity doubles for 1 hour. Requires a tail hair from a bull. A Potion of Cat's Grace. You have advantage on dexterity checks and do not take damage from falling up to 20 feet while you're not incapacitated for an hour. Requires a cat's claw. Potion of Eagle's Splendor. You have advantage on charisma checks for 1 hour. Requires an eagle's feather. Potion of Fox's Cunning. You have advantage on intelligence checks for 1 hour. Requires a fox's whisker. Or Potion of Owl's Wisdom. You have advantage on wisdom checks for 1 hour. Requires an owl's feather. These are uncommon, and what I like about these is you can seemingly, like, you can carry them around in this kind of inert state, and you can make the potion you require at the time by adding the material component to customize the effect. Here's a weapon called Wound. A great axe. The wicked edge of this serrated great axe is permanently coated in dried blood. This great axe has a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. Also, while you're raging, your attacks with this weapon deal an extra 2d6 necrotic damage, and the target's maximum hit points are decreased in equal amount to the necrotic damage dealt. Woo! The target's hit point maximum does not return to normal until it finishes a long rest, or its grievous wounds are soothed by a greater restoration spell. This will put in work. Now, you might say, well, I don't know, that seems more than rare. That might be kind of broken. Well, remember, you are decreasing the maximum hit points. If you're fighting a villain, or even a minion in a meta sense, then it might not matter, because the damage is going to bring them down anyway. But if this is used against PCs, or against forces that have ready healing, or healing is a part of the combat, whichever the situation that wound is being brought into, then that other effect will be very interesting to watch take place over the course of the combat on your table. I love this picture. So those are a couple of the named items in the campaign. Fun to use. If you want to incorporate them into your own homebrew, hey, go ahead and do so. These, you have permission to copyright or to photocopy this. These are reference cards for you to use in the adventure. And so now we have reached the appendices. new monsters. Or, not all of them are brand new, necessarily, but you can get a different take on monsters that already exist for you to perhaps freshen up things at your table. You know, it's something that some DMs run into where they might start describing a monster, and players who've been around the game for a while, or even are, you know, part of their of that table's meta. You know, you say, you know, 2 yellow claws reach up out of the water. Chul! Someone shouts. We're fighting Chuls, everyone? Okay. You know, watch out, they have that, and then you're like, does your character know this? Well, no, but we fought them before. Nah. So, that's why I'm a fan of reskinning monsters, or describing them differently, but keeping the stat blocks. Or, in this case, we're getting a different consideration for some monsters that are already in the monster... I was going to say the Monster Menagerie. Those are the 2 mini sets that are over to the side here. To the Monster Manual. A sufficiently evil character in league with fell powers can use their concordance. Remember, that's the bond that the PC who owns a temple shares with his or her deity or patron for a warlock, and sort of influences what kind of what favors or followers can be granted to you. A sufficiently evil character in league with fell powers can use their concordance to summon a fiend of the abyss. A creature of pure chaotic hate and evil called a demon. Demons are intelligent, but full of an overwhelming desire to destroy those who bind them with summoning. Fiends, like all creatures, grow in power over time, and as a demon collects souls, they grow in power. Many demons are listed in the core rules, but 2 unique to this book are listed below in their lesser forms, still serving their masters, waiting to fulfill their quota of souls to grow into their final forms. So, a unique take, right? Okay. Wanted to get my drink too. I put on the floor, which is dangerous because I accidentally had a little bit of a spill yesterday. Shh, don't tell anyone. Devils, summoned from the 7 cities of hell and the wasted lands that separate them, a variety of devils are also available to the owner of a temple. Most of those devils can be found in the core rules, but the lesser araignées is presented below. Summoned devils arrive wherever the process that brought them to this world... Summoned devils arrive aware of the process that brought them to this world and ready to make a deal once their time is up. The greater devils are aware of the existence of the Codex Incabulum and greatly desire to bring it to the 7 cities. They will make any bargain to further this goal. And so here we have our Lesser Merilith, which is a demon with the body of a snake, the torso of a woman, and many arms, wielding many, many swords. The lesser version here presented is challenge rating 5. And a lesser Baylor. Then the lesser version is 10, if that says anything to what a regular Baylor. Maybe I can bring up the other book here in between sessions. So here's some fun conceptual monsters. You know, they do already exist. But, you know, it's, as the prompt says, this is a lesser version. You know, maybe you summon in the lesser version, and by feeding them souls, or by funneling energy of some kind into them, or fulfilling your bargain, they'll grow into their forms as they're presented fully in the monster manual. Hey, Ginger Babe, welcome back. It's great to have you. Yeah, so far so good, Ginger. And the Araignées, which, by the way, an Araignées is sort of like a devil form of a Valkyrie. Winged, armored, not necessarily a seductress, but is presented as a female devil, who also does carry a magical whip. Whereas you have the succubus, which is more of the seductress, less of the martial style, and, you know, about wiles and infiltration and things along those lines. Maybe not of a fortress, but to our hearts. She will lay siege to our hearts, everyone. All right, now let's talk about some, I mean, I'll say monstrous organizations. You know, we're in the monster part of this section. But, I mean, it could be outsiders, it could be, you know, beasts, other creatures. So we're playing with kind of a loose definition. The Deva, Planetars, and Solars are beings beyond the ken of most mortal worshippers. For mortals worthy of aid, for those who pledge their life to defending the helpless and opposing evil, the gods of good and righteousness and send lesser servants, the Celestial Court. The home realm of the Celestial Court is unknown in this day. If the ancient empires knew of it, that knowledge has not yet been rediscovered. Modern sages believe each member of the court exists as a thought in the minds of the gods and goodness and righteousness, and when summoned, they are created. In some sense, it is known that the court of paradise, or court of heaven, as they're sometimes called, serve all the worthy gods. These creatures may have no home plane, unlike other servitors. These beings are utterly alien. They are the manifest will of the gods, and their nature is unknowable. They can communicate, but their words... Aw. Diadems, well, thank you for giving a birthday gift to Bunny Love. Thank you very much. These beings are utterly alien. They're the manifest will of the gods, and their nature is unknowable. They can communicate, but their words are a string of open poetry and verseless rhymes. Scholarly consensus is that these words are untranslatable gibberish, but opinions differ. One problem in translation is that each person who hears any member of the choir invisible speak hears different words. This led sages for centuries to assume that there was nothing to translate, seeing the mortal mind is incapable of holding the thoughts of the court in its head. Others, undaunted, argue that this just means more collation is needed, and that if enough listeners wrote down what they heard, and these transcriptions were compared, meaning, perhaps oracular meaning, warnings of catastrophes to come, would be revealed. All the Celestial Court are angelic beings, and their weapons are considered magical and do bonus radiant damage. They all project an aura of protection against evil. As far as theologists and philosophers can tell, there's only one of each of these beings. So if you summon a Princip, for example, and it casts haste twice before the battle is over, summoning another Princip later that day would summon the same one, and it's only got one haste, or remove curse or stone skin left. They cannot be killed by any power less than that which kills gods. Death on our plane is just a failure of their manifold projection into the timescape. If this is a cool concept, use the cool concept in your campaign. You could use it exactly as it's presented here, as it's written. Or you can take elements, or you say, well, I actually kind of have something already like this, but I like the organization, or I like the thought that, many believe that the gods are the manifest will of people. And I might be able to challenge that notion by saying, well, then the gods themselves can seemingly pass on manifestation to this celestial court, if you want to keep with that. Or if you just want to use this as verbiage, titles and words to use when you're describing your own angelic hosts. That's what books like this are meant to do. They're meant to inspire you and give you ideas to use directly, indirectly, or say, hey, I thought of that first. He just beat me to publishing it. I swears it. Hey, Coffee Cat, welcome. And hey, Veil Fears, welcome back. It's good to have you again. Veil, we just started talking about the new monsters. We went over a couple magic items that were mentioned in the campaign, but we did not talk about the campaign because I want to leave that for you to read and discover and test your knowledge of the rules in this supplement as the campaign describes itself and plays itself out. Of course, if you ever want to play in the campaign, don't read it so you don't get spoilers. Thank you, Coffee Cat. It is a very, very comfy, very large hat. Herald of the righteous power, the Princip arrives ready to crown an ally, bestowing on them a greater destiny, granting them immunity to spells that charm or dominate, and raising one ability to godlike levels. The character so crowned feels a rush of divine power, a tiny fraction of the same energy all of the celestial court are made of. Apart from the blazing crown over their head, their new power manifests as beams of light shooting from their eyes, their skin flashing to gold in an instant, and their hair turning to blazing, heatless fire. Upon losing the crown, they feel a period of melancholy as their previous greatness flees, leaving them mortal again and lesser. Well, Coffee, if you got to take some ibuprofen and lay down or do whatever you got to do some back stretches, especially if you lay down on your back and keep your arms in like palms and whatnot face down. Take one leg and cross it over the other at a 90-degree angle or as close as you can, while keeping everything else flat. That can really help to get things kind of wiggled and realigned. The player who summoned the Princip decides who crowns it, or who it crowns, which doesn't have to be the summoner. If the player can't decide or hesitates, the Princip has its own ideas. Alright, Coffee? Yeah, be relaxed, get comfy. The crown prevents any attempt to force its wearer to behave in any way contrary to their will, so the Princip tends to crown the character most likely to fail a wisdom saving throw. The wearer of the crown chooses which ability they want to raise, but raising wisdom while wearing the crown isn't the best use, as you're already basically immune to charm person and other mind-dominating spells. That is, unless you use wisdom for spellcasting, in which case 24 wisdom is going to rock your enemies for however long it lasts. Raising Constitution to 24 means you're probably not going to lose the crown when you take damage, and you'll gain a bunch of hit points, making you less likely to die. But 24 is so high, it's a +7, that you can even raise your best ability and be even better at whatever you do. So it's a choice between surviving longer and doing your thing better. Once someone is crowned, the Princeps enjoys wading into battle and smashing things with its scepter. Like all the court, the Princeps offers to smash evil over neutral monsters, but it tends to try and defend the character it crowned, even over the character who summoned it. However, if it thinks the crowned character is now so powerful it doesn't need help, it defaults to the character who summoned it, if they're different people. If neither its summoner or the crown needs help, the Princeps defends the most vulnerable party member. While one character is enjoying the benefits of temporary godhood, the Princeps dispenses other buffs to the party in an attempt to turn the tide of battle. Which, wow, it's going to do that. Again, conversational in style, right? It's talking about buffs. It can cast haste 3 times, which is enough to make a huge difference on its own. Or Stone Skin for anyone who's getting hammered in combat, and remove Curse in case the party was in trouble when it arrived. So here is a rendition of perhaps this Princeps offering the crown to a character. If the battle lasts long enough, or if the Princeps is summoned again after using its daily spells, it hands out Shield of Faith and Enhance ability to the PCs, giving each of them a little pep talk in its own bizarre fashion. The Princeps enjoys proclaiming the hero's greatness a lot, speaking in flowery prose that doesn't make literal sense, but conveys the idea that it thinks the heroes are literally gorgeous. Behold, the power arises, leaves fall, men die, yet all shall be consumed by the endless river of glory. What? The endless what now? Well, it tried. It probably means you're gonna do great. Don't think too hard about it, it'll just give you a headache. Now, it has all this, though the Princeps itself is a challenge rating 5. So it is wielding phenomenal cosmic power, but if you want to make it pop out of existence, CR5 isn't terribly hard to do. And especially if your enemy is the one who's summoning this Princeps, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's Coffee Cat. You have a Snuggle Cat, too. That's great. Yeah, Vale, there's some really, really good artwork in here. I kind of want to do artwork for the Gods of the Tuesday game, but I only know 2. Well, you know what? Over the course of our Christmas vacation coffee, maybe we can all do a little bit of collaboration and come up with a working pantheon of the major beliefs of Mesomasca, or at least of the characters who are adventuring throughout Mesomasca. So, you want to forget about all of the fluff and just run a Princeps? Well, you can. I mean, look. There are... Is it, No, this has the devil and the demon in it. It's a small picture. The Deva Angel. Remember, it talked about Devas? And look at, actually, Coffee Cat ended up opening up one of these during the raffle at the beginning of the week. We come down here to the Planetar Angel, which was talked about as well. You know, these have stats. These are in the monster manual. And here is an option that if you want to run something different, or you want to reskin this and have this be a great, I don't know, a great fey being of some kind, and it's bestowing an oaken crown with daisies growing out of it or something. Why not? Have fun with it. Reflavoring monsters is a time-honored tradition and something that I highly encourage you all to do. Pretty cool, huh? Authority. Pretty much what you'd expect from an angelic being called an authority. It is the knight of the celestial court. What paladins would like to be when they grow up. The authority arrives on our plane in heavy armor, armed with a bright sword, and looking for evil to smash. It is responsible for maintaining celestial order, and while it's absolutely committed to smashing evil, it tends to smash chaotic evil a little bit more than other evils. The authority sometimes appears spontaneously in times when a good king or democratic civilization is facing an existential threat. It seems concerned with the fate of the human race. Whether this represents some kind of political stance on the part of the Celestial Court as a whole, or a priority particular to the authority, is a matter of great debate. Badrashanti Dar, a sage from the Sharensi Empire, speaks of an angelic host, clad all in golden mail with 6 wings and a burning helm, who strode across the battlefield of the last Sharensi Emperor, thousands of years ago. This is the earliest known record of the creature that is recognizably the authority. Dar records the being as pronouncing judgment on the battlefield, saying, "Ours is to defend the children of the earth." But this translation is debated, and there are none left who can speak the sage's language natively. If Dar's record describes the authority, then there's reason to believe the authority has been a part of every major decisive battle between good and evil in the last 5,000 years. Sometimes affecting victory, sometimes being overwhelmed, but in each instance allying itself against tyranny and cruelty. The gods, it seems, have hope for the human race and send their greatest servants to bolster that hope among mortals. Tactics. Well, it finds the biggest, most evil thing and bashes the hell out of it, perhaps literally, with the bright sword. The thing does 3d6 plus 4d8 plus 4 damage to evil creatures, which is like 32 damage on average, and it can do this 3 times per turn. And it has wings and a fly speed of 40 feet, so get where it needs to do what it must. Very, very casual conversational writing, huh? You know, it's like finding, or it's like watching the director's notes on a Blu-ray or something. Or in this case, you're reading the monster manual, and the creators are like, you know, making a side note in the margin, like, oh, it'd totally be cool if, you know, if it could do this or that. And you're just like, it peels the curtain back a little bit from the official text of the source book to get the thoughts and feelings of the developers as they were coming up with the, you know, the various things. Well, Vale, you'd have to go to a temple and hopefully have high concordance and pray extra hard for this creature to come down and help you in battle. But this, as a monster, is a follower or is something you can summon above. Now, that said, this is a CR6 monster. So, we're not talking like this is, this isn't going to solo the Tarask, or the Authority isn't going to solo Maglubiet or Orcus or the like. But a CR6 creature like this will make a difference on the battlefield, especially if you are low level. Ooh. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Virtue. A collection of mouths and hands that arrive and sings power, which is a totally normal thing to do. The virtue is the word of the gods, and that word is death to evil. These songs are not spells, so magic resistance does not affect them. They are divine words spoken by a creature sent by the gods. That being said, you could just plug your ears, becoming deafened. They are actually songs. If you can't hear them, you're not affected. Tactics. The virtue is not a combatant, and it has no attack. It arrives on the battlefield and hovers 30 feet off the ground singing. If attacked, it'll move away in a tactical manner, but literally all it does is sing, switching which song is active to suit the situation. Each song is pretty straightforward. The Chorus of Succor. If the PCs are dealing with poison or other conditions that restrict their movement. Chorus of Inspiration if the players are facing creatures with high defenses. Chorus of Retribution if the players are outnumbered and taking a lot of hits. Chorus of Damnation if the players are facing fiends. If the players ask about the words to these songs, I recommend looking up a random Yes lyric from Close to the Edge, Tales from Topographic Oceans, or Relayer. Watch. Stand the marchers' soaring talons. Peaceful lives will not deliver freedom. Fighting, we know. Destroy oppression. The point to reaction. As leaders look to you, attacking. See? Proper celestial gibberish. So, if you want to open a reference off to the side and look up Yes lyrics, then you may very well do so, and you'll get proper celestial gibberish. The Virtue is a CR7, despite not being combative through attacks. And because it does have these as songs and whatnot, I'll go into the detail here. It also has an aura of protection against evil. Evil creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls against all allies within 5 feet of the Virtue. Allies in this area can't be charmed, frightened, or possessed by evil creatures. If an ally is already charmed, frightened, or possessed by evil magic, the ally has advantages on has advantage on any new saving throw against the relevant effect. It can sing at the start of each of its turns. It can only sing one chorus at a time. The Chorus of Succor. While the Virtue sings, each ally may choose one condition they're suffering from at the start of their turn and end it. Chorus of Inspiration. While the Virtue sings, each ally may add a d6 to the result of any attack roll or saving throw once per round. The ally can wait until after they rolled the d20 before deciding to use the inspiration die, but must decide before the GM says whether the roll succeeds or fails. Chorus of Retribution. While the Virtue sings, any enemy who deals damage to one of the Virtue's allies immediately takes 5 thunder damage. And Chorus of Damnation. While the Virtue sings, any extraplanar evil creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against spells that would send them to another plane. Banishment, for example. Ooh, how's this? Dominion. Now, see, this looks more like a regular angel thing. Why can't they all look like this? Why do they have to be wheels and wings and mouths and hands? The Dominion is the censure of the Celestial Court. It is both enemy to evil and ally of good. They are deeply judgmental and arrive on our plane full of opinions regarding which of your allies are worth helping. They're not the most powerful of the court, but they act like it. Now they're CR8. History records several instances in different ages and cultures when the Dominion arrived without summons. This was also chronicled in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This is rare, and when it occurs, it is usually to identify and capture some fugitive. Enemies of the great and good who have escaped the justice of the celestial host and now jaunt across the timescape looking for aid. The Dominion, in her role as celestial censure, brooks no compromise and will follow the planar outlaw across a million worlds if need be. It is not unusual for the Dominion to make oracular pronouncements, but given that her speech is a cryptic stream of consciousness open poetry, it unclear whether anyone has ever properly decoded her intent. Instances where, in retrospect, it seems as though a mortal was able to make sense of the Dominion's pronouncement could have been pure coincidence. The Dominion is so impressive and the force of her presence so overwhelming, it's not unusual for a mortal to try and glimpse the face under the veil. As far as history records, no one has done this and retained their sanity long enough to report what they saw. The great thing about the Dominion is that you don't have to choose whether to attack an enemy or heal an ally. The Ray of Salvation does both, making the Dominion one of the most straightforward servitors you can summon. It flies, it has a pretty good ranged attack, and its resistances mean it's going to be extremely difficult for enemies to deal with. It doesn't do much damage for a CR8 creature, unless it's fighting evil. 3d6 twice isn't the end of the world, but the fact that it's healing your allies while damaging your enemies means it will change the tide of battle, which is the point of servitors. Obviously, it should focus on those enemies adjacent to one or more of your allies, but it doesn't have to, if a well-placed bolt of light from its scepter would make the difference. Are there any Celestials that are part chariot in this supplement? Well, there's a wheel. I guess it's the throne, but... Throne. What? W-A-T? Okay, well, look. I don't make these things up. The gods do that, and who are we to question them? Says author Matt Colville. The throne is the jailer of the gods. It quarantines evil by trapping and burning it. It refers to itself variously as the key in the cage. It is one of the less communicative in the court, if that is possible, and has its own motivations, which it does not reveal. It is so dedicated to removing evil from the world that it won't obey its master. It chooses its enemies based solely on their commitment to evil powers, not the threat they pose in combat. It's not uncommon for a battle to end with a creature imprisoned within the throne, only for the throne to return to its home plane with the creature, presumably removing it from our world forever. Though, the kind of enemy who can survive that and return to our plane would be a memorable villain indeed. The throne is the hereditary enemy of the Order of Desecration, detailed elsewhere. When it imprisons an agent of evil and retreats back to wherever the celestial host abide, it takes its prisoner with it. Only the most powerful and experienced rangers of the timescape can attempt to follow. The tales they tell upon returning are confusing and inconsistent. Each of those who survived the throne's imprisonment and return to tell the tale describe the realm of the celestial court differently. Some describe an island with green grass and tall white marble columns. Some describe a vast field of wheat where prides of lions lounge under a brilliant blue sky, or a thick forest with tame woodland beasts and ripe fruit hanging from the trees. Whether these are different places, the same place with different regions, or some manifestation created from the mind of an imprisoned is not known. Only the Knights of Desolation know the secret of gaining access to that realm, and they will not reveal what they know. Tactics, it chooses the most evil enemy creature by whatever metric you want and attacks it. Once it is imprisoned, the throne will obey its summoner and attack whomever they want, but not if it would free the evil trapped within. A seraph. And you thought the throne was weird. You were right about that, by the way. The greatest of the Celestial Court, the seraph devastates anything on the battlefield foolish enough to oppose the heroes, taking special interest in evil creatures, obviously, but also in chaotic beings. It just vomits damage onto everything and everyone. It has the same telepathy the rest of the Celestial Court have, but it uses it for anything other than shouting single-word epithets into people's minds. Burn. Finish. Exalt. Tactics. In spite of not having, like, a face or eyes, the Seraph cannot be flanked or surprised. It can use each weapon twice, so you decide if it needs to be in melee or not. And then either make 2 bow shots each from Alpha and Omega, or 2 mace attacks each from Good and Law. Alpha heals allies next to enemies it damages, which will help you choose which enemies to get to next. So yeah, Vale, if you're a good little cleric, and you take your vitamins and say your prayers, you can summon the Celestial Court to deal combat with your enemies. Hi, Mark Lore. That was kind of the lore. It's a damage dealer in the court. I mean, if you want to look at perhaps its particulars for its actions, that might give a little bit more lore. But as far as the fluff is concerned, here you go. It's as a life cleric multi-class with Celestial Warlock. God, I hope so. But yeah, it's Mark Lore. It's pretty much just you summon it and it deals damage to the most evil, chaotic being out there. It does one thing and it does it well. The Court of All Flesh. As with all things in Primordius, the Sea of Eternal Change, the favor of the Lords of Chaos is quixotic. I know it's like Don Quixote, but it's quixotic. And fluctuates constantly. Currently, the 6 members described here hold the favor of the White King and Red Queen. But the only constant in Primordius is change. At any moment, the Court of All Flesh could be rearranged or replaced completely. Warlocks and Dark Priests of old still consider all these courtiers as newcomers on the stage, and they lament the passing in favor of the unseen Karis Vor and the reflection of Mor Lu, whom they consider greater and more powerful than these lesser beings. Formerly the Red Prince, Maladar Dictum schemes to regain his position. Lord Rawl, his retainer, and the Queen of Bone would both like to see their prince return to his rightful position beside the Red Queen, or better, they would prefer to see him take her place. But more, even more than that, they each scheme to take their own place on one of the thrones of chaos, awaiting the moment when they will betray their lord. Unchanging changers. Members of the court are beings of pure chaos. Any attempt to force them to change form simply passes through them. There's nothing substantive about them. No quintessence for a spell or ability to manipulate. Not evil. The changing ones are not evil. Indeed, they arrive in the mundane world committed to helping the character who summoned them, even dying for them. They are not for good nor evil. They are opposed to law, to tyranny, to any force that attempts to slow or stifle change. Baron Malgus. The newest Lord of Chaos, Malgus clawed and scraped his way into the lowest rank of the court and is only getting started. His barely disguised contempt for Maladar Dictum doesn't prevent him from coming when called, though. Malgus is no fool. Malgus enjoys boasting and taunting his enemies. He is a theatrical character, new to power and fulsome in it. He acts as though he is already chief of the court and openly disparages the other members while they're not around. Come, sons and daughters of order, and meet your ender. Tactics. Malgus is a melee bruiser and enjoys inflicting pain, preferring to match himself against the enemy's melee warriors. But, like all servitors, he will follow the orders of his summoner. He prefers to use his melt flesh ability on his immediate enemy, but will deploy it tactically to force a powerful enemy spellcaster to cease casting, or a fighter to drop their weapon, even if he's not currently fighting that character. CR5. Melt Flesh. Baron Malgus chooses a target he can see within 30 feet. The Tajay must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw, or watch as their dominant hand melts into a runny, fleshy lump. It drops whatever weapon it was carrying, cannot hold a weapon in that hand, and cannot cast spells that require somatic components. At the end of each of its turns, the target repeats this saving throw, ending the effect on itself on a success. Casting Mending on the affected hand also ends the effect. If the target succeeds on a saving throw, the creature becomes immune to the Baron's melt flesh for the next 24 hours. Korsoth Vastican. Once a rival to Maladar Dictum, then Duke Vastican was brought low by a mob of rat catchers. He returned to the Sea of Eternal Change, licked his wounds, and conferred with the ghosts of forgotten sages, chasing the lore of form killing. Now, armed with this ancient knowledge, Vastican has clawed his way back into the king and queen's favor. He is a hunter, a thief, and a master of deceit. His voice is a low whisper, a sneer. He does not like the mundane world, finding it overly suffused with law. Tactics. It takes a lot to trigger Form Killer. Vastican must hit the target 3 times out of 4, and the target has to fail a Constitution saving throw. But if they fail, the results are interesting, italicized. According to the rules, the change lasts only 1 hour. According to the rules. According to these rules I made up. I mean, all rules are made up, aren't they? How long would Form Killer last if you made the rules? It's your game. For extra spice, consider using the original 1970s reincarnation rules. 2% chance of turning into a raccoon. 4% chance of turning into a hawk. 3% chance you're a badger. When Vastican hits a target with 3 arrows in 1 round, the target must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or lose its native form. Roll on the reincarnation table to determine the target's new form. The target reverts to its original form after 1 hour. Or does it, says the footnote. A target that succeeds on its saving throw becomes immune to Form Killer for 24 hours. The Queen of Bones. Rival and sometimes companion to Maladar Dictum, the Queen of Bones is the Chaos Priest of the Court of All Flesh. She was once the White Queen, but her husband, the King of Blood, was annihilated in the Battle of Callus Mithril by the Knights of Axiom under the leadership of the Inexorable Will. So definitely has a grudge against, lawfulness and orderliness. In the eons since, the queen has risen and fallen, and now finds herself allied to Maladar Dictum. Theirs is a marriage of convenience. Each sees the leverage the alliance brings them. Neither expects more from the other than what the other will give. It is perhaps for exactly this reason that neither has betrayed the other in their long years together. What would be the point? Each is already acting in and only in their own best interests. They hope by nurturing this court to challenge the current king and queen of chaos. The oldest surviving member of the court, with the possible exception of the madness flesh Ursoft, the queen is languid and slow to anger. She looks at her enemies with mild annoyance. They are temporary. Change is eternal. She will show them. She rides an animation of skeletons harvested from the creatures she's killed. They are not undead, more like a moving sculpture. The queen is an artist with bone her preferred medium, ideally the bones of the living. Tactics. A powerful spellcaster, the queen arrives armed with a combination of spells designed to aid the summoner and damn their enemies. Freedom of movement will undo many ills, and Stone Skin or Shield of Faith will help her allies withstand damage. Death Ward is for those allies close to death. Dispel Magic is a Swiss Army knife of solutions to many problems. Ossuary. The queen targets one creature she can see within 30 feet of her and turns its own skeleton into a jail. The target must make a DC 16 Constitution saving throw against this magic. By the way, she's a CR7. On a failed save, it takes 46 necrotic damage and is paralyzed for 1 minute. At the end of each of its turns, the target can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on itself on a success. If the target succeeds on the save, or if the effect ends on it, the target becomes immune to Ossuary for 24 hours. So she's carried by her skeletons. And of course she has many standard offensive spells, including banishment, for those enemies summoned from other planes by evil priests with their own temples. The queen's favorite offensive tactic, of course, is her ossuary. By taking control of a target's skeleton, she can freeze them in place, imprisoning them with their own bones. On average, this is only going to last 2 rounds, if it works, but that's still 2 rounds of an enemy doing nothing. Since its DC is Constitution based, she tends to target spellcasters and glass cannons. Hey Mantarok, welcome! The Vizier of the Court, Lord Rawl, is Maladar's personal wizard. Once Lord Rawl had a more conventional form, but he forgot it somewhere and never seemed to notice. As he demonstrates in battle, he can reform himself out of any old organs you may have lying around. Rawl is precise and surgical, tactical. He likes experimenting on enemies. He is fascinated by creatures with one set form. Creatures who find their identities wrapped up in their shape. How strange, Lord Rawl thinks. Imagine what a different person you could be if you wore your brains on the outside. Or if you had many fewer or many more limbs. Only fools fear change. Rawl has no ambition. He does not plot or scheme. For this reason, he does not rise higher than Vizier to this, the lower court. But neither does he need to fear betrayal. Rawl is a potent wizard. Unlike the Queen of Bone, Rawl is not particularly interested in helping his allies, preferring to drop Cloud Kill on his enemies or lock them in place with black tentacles. Lord Rawl channels his power through the Staff of Changing, molding his enemies to suit his terrible whims. Because of his deep understanding of form and changing, he does not need to concentrate on this. He fully expects to be able to turn every enemy in the battle into slimy things given time. Rawl's staff remakes a target into any shape he desires. He casts polymorph from it as an action. The range is 30 feet, and the wisdom saving throw has a DC of 16. Lord Rawl does not need to concentrate on this spell to maintain it. So he'll just turn you into a squirrel. Or 2 squirrels. Connected by the tails or something. Any pile of organs will do, and this is the ability to come back to life, because any organs will work. Hi, Daily. What a night, and we just reached the halfway pole. Oh, well, if you're on break, Daily, welcome back. It's been fun exploring the new monsters in the back of this supplement. There's some really nice, organizations, good thoughts, a lot of really good characterization. So even if you don't want to run Lord Rawl as Lord Rawl, you might want to drop an enemy kind of like Lord Rawl in concept in your own homebrew. So as we're discovering, this supplement is full of great conversational topics, strategy, and just this exists. And if you want to modify it, go ahead and do so. Have fun. That's what this game is all about. Ursofk, the Mad Oracle, the Madness Flesh. Ursofk, may once have been a king or queen of chaos itself. No one remembers that far back. Rumors are easy to come by, tales of things older than the thrones themselves. Things of pure changing power with no minds, no will except to remake the universe in their own terrible, fluctuating, imageless images. Ursofk is the only member of the court who is vulnerable to shape-changing magics, lacking sufficient will to prevent it. Any image of Ursofk is by definition a facile rendering by lesser minds. Gazing upon the Mind Wiper, one sees organs and limbs twisting and reshaping. Often one feels one is seeing many sides of the same beast at the same time, or an amalgam of many different creatures, each superimposed over the others. But this is no image. Their limbs meld into each other, twisting in torturous ways. Often the various appendages shudder, as though the creatures who once had these body parts are suffering incredible agony. The smell itself is enough to choke someone, a rotting abattoir of putrid, maggoty meat. Ursofk is also known as the Oracle of the Court of All Flesh, occasionally making prophetic pronouncements that often come true. Ursofk's madness is in no way impairs his second sight. Tactics. The Madness Flesh broadcasts an insanity field that interferes with conscious thought, causing nausea in intelligent creatures. Because its DC is based on intelligence, maybe don't drop this guy next to the enemy magic user. Fighters and rogues are more likely to fail their saves. Just the sight of Ursofk ignites its madness aura, which blocks enemies' minds from being able to formulate the thoughts required to cast spells. This is a passive ability, though, so you don't have to burn an action to do it. Ursofk's epic closer is Meld Flesh, which literally melts 2 adjacent enemies into one gestalt. Not as radical as it sounds, the gestalt creature can do anything the original 2 could do, but it only gets 1 turn. This 1 prompts a Constitution saving throw, so it's a good option for hitting magic users and glass cannons. Mantarok is here summoning power. Daily, what's been a highlight of your night so far? Maladar Dictum. Currently one of the Dukes of Chaos, or Chouse. Lord Dictum serves the Red Queen. He is ambitious and plans to replace both the King and the Queen, but so do all the Dukes and Duchesses of Chaos. For now, Dictum bides his time and waits. Dictum does not enjoy being pulled into the mundane world and forced to do the bidding of uniform mortals. The Red Queen knows this and enjoys dispatching Dictum. What she may not know is that Maladar has the power alone of all the servitors to summon the other members of his court. This means his grace may have the power beyond the thrones of chaos. May know something in the other members of the court do not. If he summons the rest of his court in some other realm, who knows what new court of chaos might be established there. Maladar chafes at his summoning and openly yearns to unleash his power on whatever universe he finds himself in. But the Red Queen commands, and Maladar Dictum must obey for now. Tactics. This dude, you really don't want to damage this guy. It's only going to make things harder for you. Unless he's on your side, in which case absolutely dump him in the middle of melee attacks and stand back. He will, after only one round of attacks, be dealing outstanding amounts of damage. He'll have claws and tentacles, or 11 tentacles, or 11 tickles, or 12 tickles. If you really want to see things get out of control very quickly, watch Maladar summon Korsoth the Vastican, or Korsoth Vastican, and stand back as the Duke of Chaos orders his ranger to fire four arrows from Form Killer into him. Boom. Instant 4 extra attacks per round. Oh my god. Whose idea was this? Madness. So, you can go back to the ones we had here, and we have a summon who can summon a summon. Challenge rating 10. The Court of Arcadia. Once these creatures served the kings and queens of the high elves of the great woad that covered all Orden. Val, their god, walked the land with them, then a war between the gods, and in the aftermath, Val left the mundane world and took his closest servants with him to their own realm, Arcadia, a paradise of nature, poetry, song, and art. Arcadia is a perfect, unchanging realm where art is a mirror held to nature. Its denizens are melodramatic, quick to take offense, and they hold grudges for ages. All their rivalries and jealousies come from the most absurdly small things. Which flowers are best for bees to make honey? Which pool best reflects dawn's light to flatter one's profile? Whether jam or butter is best on toast with tea. It seems a kind of madness, and perhaps it is, for the servants of Val no longer have a world to tend. Arcadia tends itself. As a result, Arcadians relish returning to the mundane world. They don't want to leave. They love seeing what men have done with the place, as gauche and déclassé as everything is. Really? A castle there? Is this really the alphabet you write with? My word. What's happened to style? Oh, well, it's still better than the perfect, boring nothing that Arcadia has become since Val moved there permanently. Technically, it's a realm of perfect natural chaos, but the thing about perfect chaos is it's so predictable. Yawn. The Court of Arcadia were all created by Val to be above his more populous creation, the elves. As such, and again, so if your cosmology, your mythology is different, but you like the concepts, change it up. Make this your story in your own way. As such, the Arcadians can command elves and fae with ease. This is, in fact, their job, to keep the other fae creatures in line and tend the woads. Elves don't like being reminded of this, so of course the Arcadians take every opportunity to remind them of it. Law versus Chouse. The Arcadians are servants of nature. They exist to glorify her. To them, a road is a wound, a knife cut through the perfect chaos of the natural world. Farms are a disease, infecting the earth by taming it, forcing it to serve, while its proper place is to be served. Killing the land, making it a slave to man, this is law. They hate civilization and all it brings. This is one reason Val left the mundane world and took his favored with him. Now, Arcadia is an Edenic representation, and so Eden. I guess it, well, Edenic sounds a little bit better than Edenic, but whatever. Potato, patata. Edenic representation of everything the Arcadians desire. Raw, untamed nature as a perfect art. The servants of Val consider themselves the enemies of both the Knights of Axiom and the Court of All Flesh. Created to serve the High Elves, the Arcadians view nature as a self-evident good, a power they serve above all others. To them, chaos means freedom, the freedom of a vine to grow where it will, and yes, even destroy and pull down a wall or a gate in time. The low things of the Court of All Flesh are a corrupt mirror mockery to this. To the Arcadians, the Court of All Flesh represents discord, chaos twisted into an evil, destructive form. Mantis Knight. The swashbuckling adventurers of the Arcadians, the Mantis Knights love dueling and drinking and terrible poetry. The greatest of them, like Lady Ueshleth, keep an air of grave dignity about them because they have known battle across myriad worlds. But most Mantis Knights just want to show up, do something dashing and acrobatic, spit an enemy upon their sword, and then go carousing with the mortals who summoned them. Tactics. Their armor makes them very hard to grapple, and they enjoy showing this off by taunting enemies who rely on grappling. They bolster the spirits of their allies with heroism and shield of faith, making mortals almost the equals of an Arcadian. You're welcome. Otherwise, they enjoy dancing around the battlefield, laying into enemies with their twin rapiers. Simple pleasures. So here's a Mantis Knight. CR5. Whoa. How about that, huh? If you all like moths, seems that we have one. Monarchon. The Monarchon is an embodiment of youth and death, spring and fall. It is gay and sprightly and a harbinger of doom. Once mortals knew that to gaze upon the death's head skull of the Monarchon spelled the end. Now it's been so long since the last Arcadians lived in the mundane world that mortals must learn these lessons all over again. The Monarchon enjoys speaking with those who summoned her, but she speaks in cryptic open poetry. This language is perfectly clear to other created fae, the naiads and the dryads and centaurs, but is usually opaque to mortals. Trees grow roots, but also leaves. We were fools to think we could change the stars. Something inside has stopped pretending. I have tasted your grace and felt it diffuse around me. You came to change directions. Which way do you face now? Pretty cringy, but don't say that around the Monarchon. She might turn your face inside out. When not withering or hypnotizing her enemies, she is pleasant to be around. She is fascinated by mortals, loves watching the artfully slow decay of their flesh into inevitable death. If she had her way, she'd stick around for the final myocardial infraction and then celebrate your death, possibly by baking your corpse into bread. So weird. Tactics. The Monarchon can fly. I mean, of course she can. Look at those wings. She prefers to fly around the battlefield, casting spells and hypnotizing enemies. The saving throw for her hypnotic display is wisdom-based, so she often targets melee fighters or rogues. She won't bother using it on enemy shamans or priests. Finally, if she is attacked or otherwise there is a great need, she will land and use her withering touch. This is something of a last resort. She prefers to use this ability on enemies close to death. Withering touch is, down here, it's just a straight up. +7 to hit, 5-foot reach, and takes 2d10 plus 4 necrotic damage. An Orchid Count. The dashing archer sorcerer of the court, the Count is often seen flanked by 2 Mantis Knights, dueling and carousing their way through the Alloy, the city of 4 elements. Or, I guess, not alloy. Known in some realms as the City of Brass, Val counts on the Count, the renegade of the Arcadians, to disobey him. He can be found wherever he's told not to go. Tales of his daring midnight raids on Quadandrar the fourth city of Ordos, are legendary. Possibly some of them are true. Quote, "Why, how now, mortal? Thy jaw hangeth slack. Hast thou never seen a sunrise before?" Tactics. The Count relies on his now you see me, now you don't combo to get him in and out of danger. He uses blur to avoid attacks and tactical advantage to maximize damage. He enjoys harrying spellcasters and using Misty Step to get behind enemy lines and attack whomever the enemy is trying to protect. Now you see me. If the Count teleports next to an enemy, he immediately makes 2 rapier attacks with advantage against that enemy. Now you don't. This has a recharge of 4 to 6. As a reaction, if an enemy the Count can see makes a successful melee or ranged attack roll against him, he casts Misty Step. The Oleander Dragon. Nerium the Petal Dragon, known also as Oleander Dragon, is part of the prized pets of Val and normally slumbers decoratively in one of the courtyards. Its disguise is so perfect, newcomers to the court often fail to recognize it's not actually a flowering topiary shrub in the shape of a sleeping dragon. The only true shape changer in the court, Nerium enjoys complimenting those who summon her by transforming into a very flattering interpretation of them. This has no practical value other than being artful and poetic, which is really the only thing the Arcadians care about. Nerium very rarely speaks, and when she does, it's usually only one word. She's just vastly underwhelmed by the paucity of expression available with language. Unlike any other dragon and most creatures, the Oleander Dragon has no physical attack. It has no teeth or claws and considers such things crude. She prefers to be beautiful and would rather awe enemies so overmuch with its perfect glamour as to force them to reconsider the terrible decisions they made in their lives and abandon all violence. Tactics. Lacking physical attacks, Nerium relies on Implant Nightmare to overwhelm her enemies with fear. She opens combat with the spores from her pollen breath, then sings the Song of Sestilani, which can end battle all by itself. And that is, the Oleander Dragon sings a magical song. Each enemy that can hear it must succeed on a DC 16 intelligence saving throw or take 48 plus 4 psychic damage and be stunned for 1 minute. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. An Ash Marshal. So, a tree, right? Pardon. Tasked with defending and escorting guests to Arcadia, the Ash Marshals is also the only member of the court to be regularly sent seeking across the plains, dispatched by Val to bring those who would harm his creation to justice. He is Val. That is the elves in Mr. Colville's world here. The Marshal calls upon Val to aid him and give him power in battle, and Val infuses his hunter with arcane power. His spellcasting relies on his ability to convince Val the need for aid is great. The Marshal assumes that if Val has sent him to aid the Concordant, then things must be dire. He surveys the battle and identifies the greatest immediate threat to the character who summoned him, and attacks with the Ash Sword, hoping to censure the target, forcing them, or at least strongly encouraging them, to focus on the Marshal instead. His spells are almost all offensive, but he's always ready with counterspell to thwart enemy spellcasters, as well as banishment in case an enemy is summoned by any members of the Court of All Flesh. The Sidereal Vizier. We have a very cosmic-looking elf here. Val's Magus, the Vizier, is the most powerful mage in Arcadia. When a concordant petitions the court for an ally, the vizier reviews their case and chooses who among the Arcadians to send. Thus, when the sidereal vizier arrives on the battlefield, it is because he chose to come, deeming the situation dire enough, or the concordant pious enough, to attend to the matter personally. All the members of the court of Arcadia are noble, but only the vizier is an actual celestial, one of the true elves who once lived in the mundane world, but journeyed with Val to attend him in Arcadia. 9 feet tall, perfect in form, the vizier has skin of a literal starfield, a window into the night sky, constellations recognizable. The vizier does not behave like a thing summoned. He takes charge, he runs the battle. When the duration of his summoning is over, he leaves because he chose to leave. Great power is granted you, concordant, for behold, I arrive. Tactics. If a spell can solve the problem, the vizier knows it and has it prepared. The list below is only one possible configuration. The vizier uses maze if there's an obvious enemy boss, and deploys chain lightning to deal with mobs of enemies. Are you digging the art? There's some awesome art in this supplement. Very, very cool stuff. Seer Kid? Is that how you want it pronounced? Thank you very much for the follow. I hope you're enjoying the review, the narration, and the art. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask them. The Court of Elements. Actually, so wait, we have the Court of Elements, and then we also have... yes, then we have the Gem Dragons. I'll tell you what, everyone. Let's take a little bit of a break. Like 5 minutes, right? Take 5 minutes to freshen up. Then why don't we come back and we'll do sort of a part 2 of the monsters, like the courts, the organizations that we have going on here. Looking at the art and enjoying it. If you want to discuss it, you're welcome to do so. And then we'll come back and we'll do the Gemstone Dragons and the Elemental Court. But let's take a little bit of a break. I'm getting a little low in my drink. I'm doing a lot of narrating, so I want to make sure that I have a lot of beverage on hand to keep things going so I don't blow my voice out, especially before Christmas here, right? Well, you know what? This has been a lot of fun to go over, to look through. And I do want to encourage you all that if you're comfortable introducing these rules to manage within the campaign you may already be managing, that you could have a lot of fun with this. All right, so let's come back here in like 5 minutes, everyone, and we'll continue our journey, all right?